Ladies and gentlemen, dear members, a very warm welcome to our monthly Innovation and Tech Talk online event. Today we will be speaking about cyber resilience with a particular focus on the healthcare industry. The presenter today is Ivan Sanchez Lopez. He works as Chief Information Security Officer for Sanitas. I met Ivan when in 2014, for the first time in Chicago at the ISACA head offices. Ivan was working in Germany at that time, and he has always been an expert in the information security space. And I know since he moved over to Sanitas that he has developed a particular profile in the healthcare industry. So we thought this is a really valuable and interesting topic to share with the broader community. To introduce myself, my name is Matthias Kraft. I am a board member of the ISACA Germany chapter, and I'll be hosting you in this event. And now let me welcome you, Ivan, on the stage, and also give you some indications for this event. So this event is being recorded and made available together with any handouts after the event on isaca.de. We will be issuing a CPE certificate approximately 2 weeks after the event to the email address that you provided when you registered. If there are any questions to the presenter and the moderator, and we will have about 15 minutes to go through Q&A, please ask them via the chat function in the WebEx suite. Should you have any feedback to the event, suggestions for topics, or if you're even interested to present yourself, please reach out to us via email on fg-innovation@isaca.de. And also already giving you an outlook on the Tech Talk event in June. This has already been set up and open for registration, and we'll be speaking about Active Directory security presented by our chapter president, Dr. Tim Sattler. So now, again, let me welcome Ivan on the stage, and over to you.
Hi, hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clear and loud.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matthias, for the introduction. Pleasure to be with all of you here today. And talking a little bit about healthcare, information security, and in general, everything that the sector and the industry is happening now. So I'm sharing my screen now. So hopefully it will pop up soon. Hopefully you can see it now. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. Fantastic. So I said, thanks for having me here today. A pleasure. Again, for my times in Germany, working in a different industry, now back in Spain, working in the healthcare industry for Sanitas. We'll have some time today for talking about transformation, security, and cyber resilience in the healthcare industry. We will be talking about, well, what the industry is doing now, where we come from, and how information security and why information security is being a hot topic for us. Not much about me, already said by Matthias, working in a number of industries, in a number of countries, now working as Chief Information Security Officer for Europe and Latam, for Sanitas, which is a healthcare insurance company that is part of the Bupa Group. This British multinational, headquartered in London and based in Madrid, have oversight of a number of countries. So again, quite interesting role, and again, quite interesting industry. So what I would like you to take away from the session today, basically a bit of more understanding on how the healthcare industry is changing by applying latest technologies and new, completely fully digital business models. We all know that data is the new oil, is the new gold, and of course, medical and the healthcare industry is definitely going into it. So secondly, for you to understand that increasing attack surface as IoT and MIoT medical devices and all the digital elements that are being introduced in a very, I would say, traditional environment like hospitals and healthcare are completely changing the attack surface and the attack profile of hospitals and medical provision businesses, and propose very basic 4 fundamental pillars for a model on healthcare, which are quite applicable. So it doesn't matter in the industry you're working on, but I hope if you are joining today and working in the healthcare industry, you will find those useful and applicable to your particular challenges. Okay, so let's go into it. So, okay, yeah. So basically, well, we all know the inherent value of data, and our lifestyle generates a vast amount of data. Okay, so first is, well, we have our mobile phones, social networks, our daily interaction with colleagues, friends, call, messages, WhatsApp, whatever. It's a huge amount of data. Same as our payment methods. I think our credit cards now come with us in mobile phones in many cases. They are moved to digital as well. They are generating patterns on our cells and our behaviors and defining what we do, and again, creating a very valuable amount of data. But not only that, we have even things like cars, for example. So cars are fully connected devices. I mean, if you have the opportunity to be in a Tesla, you can see it's basically, it's a cockpit, it's basically a huge kind of iPad style, and it's just full of data. It's basically a computer with 4 wheels. So there is a huge amount of data, but there is something that we have been overlooking in the past as something that is valuable in the amount of data it generates, which is basically our body. Our body is the biggest data generator in the world. Of course, difficult to quantify, but there's studies that say every one of us carries an amount of data that is approximately 18 terabytes of data. 18 terabytes of data. That's been estimated by the Genome Project. So again, it's a huge amount of data that our body passively and actively generates. So when the healthcare industry, which is has been a fairly traditional industry, has realized, hey, look, there is this element that can generate so valuable data. We need to find the ways of utilizing those data for our own benefit and for the benefits of our patients and our clients. That's when healthcare meets digital. I will come later how this impacts the security space. So at the end, what Thomas Goetz, which is, well, a journalist, is entrepreneur on healthcare, he's a truly believer on the usage of medical data for the good of the whole humanity. He has a couple of tech talks I recommend to find that. And yeah, basically he speaks about how sharing, how the best use of our data can help everyone. But yeah, so the healthcare is not anymore a science problem. So the medical practice has not changed dramatically in the last years. We'll say hundreds, probably 1,000 years. Consider the Hippocratic, statement that every doctor, swears is like more than, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 years old. This has not been changed. The fundamentals of the medical practice and the healthcare practice has not been changed. So it's not anymore a science problem. It's an informational problem. It's how we manage all the vast amount of data to, again, profit, not in the sense of monetary profit, but on the improve of science, on improve of treatments, and again, the technology country does, right? This is clearly an informational challenge. So that the data again is huge. The technology is already available since years. And businesses and companies have seen that. So as I said, unlocking these insights and the value from these medical records is of high value for everyone. Of course, there was always some kind of questioning, right? About, well, utilizing medical data always poses second questions like, well, what about privacy? What about the security of that data? What about GDPR, compliance regulations? We will talk later about that. But it's clear there is a recognition that all the stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystems, there's an opportunity for all of them, even for governments, I would say. Healthcare costs is an increasing cost in every mature or in every developed country. Actually, it's the biggest challenge we have. We have an aging population in our countries, and this creates this pressure. So any percentages we can reduce, we can optimize, while not, of course, decreasing the quality of healthcare provided to our citizens. That's huge. That vasted billions of money that can be dedicated, of course, to other areas of the government. Right? So there's really an interest for every actor in the industry. And of course, the big techs. So Peter Diamandis, which is CEO of Health and Longevity, which is another guru on health tech and healthcare data management. He said, I think it was like 2017, he said, we're going to see all the big players and the data-driven companies that are really embedded in our daily life entering as healthcare providers. Look, as healthcare providers, they will be providing healthcare services. So imagine the Amazon hospital, right? Or the Alphabet hospital. Well, they tried, actually. They have tried. So yeah, you use Alexa, for example, is since years compliant with HIPAA laws. If you're not familiar, HIPAA is the Healthcare Information Privacy Act, which basically is kind of the GDPR for medical data in the US. Okay, so Alexa is compliant with HIPAA laws since years, and there are more than 2,000 wellness skills on Alexa, integrations with medical devices, monitoring devices, telemedicine devices. So that's already happening, right? Okay, yeah, and yeah, there's a very big business opportunity, because whenever there's a business opportunity, companies are willing to invest and look for new ways of, again, improving the sector. So interestingly, in the years before this presentation, the big tech company have been investing in fintech companies, in mobility companies even, but mainly in finance, right? But since 2-3 years, maybe a bit more, these big companies have been moving away from investing in these companies and investing into healthcare-based companies. So Google Ventures, GV, as you will see there, Google Ventures is the investment arm of Alphabet, you know, the conglomerate of Google and all the companies in the group. And they have a huge amount of cash, actually, and they invest in companies whenever they see, of course, a profit. The good thing is these companies do not see immediate profit. What they see is long-term profit. So it's very interesting to see where do they invest, right? So since January 2018, they have the largest, actually, as of today, investing team in Google Ventures is the one that invests and analyzes the healthcare industry. And they have invested more than 30 health and life science companies, right? Some of them very interesting, like companies that have contact lenses that can connect remotely and can measure your blood pressure, your glucose, everything. So very interesting stuff, right? Even companies like Amazon or Berkshire Hathaway and JP Morgan, they created Project Haven, which it was a failed project. It was a failed project because they wanted to enter into healthcare, into provisioning healthcare, into, again, hospital, Amazon hospital, right? So they said it's not canceled, it's on hold, but I'm pretty sure they will probably try again. Why? Because the wearable devices are everywhere. And again, that's another source of data generation. So I don't know, I have one here, probably you have medical devices, which is, by the way, this is a medical device. And it has a Europe certification for being available to have a medical device. So that is happening, and the market is booming. It's increasing a lot. It's doubled compared 2018 versus it was close in 2021, more than 62 billion worldwide. So yeah, this mHealth, this mobile health is everyone at an affordable prices, I would say, right? Together with things like 5G, another connectivity was another issue for these devices. With 5G is not anymore. 5G is, well, it's, I would, of course, not everywhere, but it's mostly Europe, in the US, developed countries. So there's no more problems of connectivity, artificial intelligence, AI. Again, all that is creating a huge amount of business opportunity for this company. So let's analyze the very specific case of Verily. Verily Life Sciences is a company, it was formerly said as Google Life Sciences, is the one that invests, right, and partners with healthcare and medical companies, right, with that very well, nice motto, which is make the world's health data useful so people enjoy health lives. Very inspirational, but basically how are they doing that? Because they have these investors, which basically dedicate money for, well, for profit, but again, for improvement. And this data have some time, but probably a year or so, and they have more than 1,520 patents and applications, and that number is growing. It is growing. So it's really amazing to see how a company like Google are transforming themselves and partnering with companies like the ones you can see there. But it's not only Google or Alphabet. You know, this comes from a report which is extremely interesting. I can really recommend you to have a look, which is an EY report called "When the Human Body is the Biggest Data Platform, Who Will Capture Value?" It's very interesting because basically everything I'm telling you now, there's a big opportunity how I can capture that value, right? So you see Alphabet, Microsoft, Apple has been only in the US, they have been creating patents for exploiting and analyzing that medical data. And again, that's only in the US, okay? So the thing is, I said, the technology is here already. So yeah, we already have a way of exploiting this data. What we are seeing is a product called Philips Lumify. What Doctor holds is an iPhone. It's a standard iPhone, like your iPhone or my iPhone or everyone's iPhone. It's standard device. It's not a medical device. It's not a super complex or super expensive device. It's a consumer device. That consumer device, of course, with the Philips Lumify connected, as you can see in the picture, can become an echographer. So it's amazing. You know, in the past, well, still today, probably you need to go to the hospital for echography, whatever. Look, maybe in some years, when this consumerization has arrived to our homes, you know, maybe we can bring hospital to our homes. So it's very interesting. And again, it's already available. The link is to the US, but I think it's available worldwide. So if you are interested to get your own echographer, you can probably buy it. So technology is here already, right? So how this impacts, now we enter into how this impact, how changes our life as security professionals. Well, the first thing is a clear statement. Information security or cybersecurity has been traditional, not really paid much attention in healthcare environments for many reasons. First, because I said before, the realization of the amount of data and the value of data was not so clear, was not so evident. It was a reactive medicine. I mean, let's face it, we normally go to the doctor when we have a pain. And, oh, back is paining, is having some pain, probably to go to the doctor. That's reactive medicine, right? And this is what probably we still are today. And you know, even from a cost point of view, it's not it's a profitable business. Otherwise, there would not be hospitals or business. But there's huge competition, and in many countries, it's extremely regulated. Extremely regulated. Even in Europe, it's extremely regulated, and it's not homogeneous per country. It's a very different how countries regulate the healthcare industry. And actually, there is something very interesting that your main competitor is not the company. Your main competitor is the state, is the government. And it's normally it's not good to have the government as your main competitor, right? So probably that was not the very first focus of many companies to try to focus on information security, but to focus on treatment, basically, right? Another factor that has been impacting the shade, the maturity state on the healthcare environment is the huge dependency of the third-party providers. I mean, that's not, of course, specific to the healthcare business. I think industrial businesses or many businesses, they have a huge dependency for legacy devices and non-secure third-party devices that can't be, let's say, managed by the IT teams. But it's especially critical in the healthcare business because it's a very close business. There are probably no more than 5 very big companies that produce medical equipment, and they're very protective. And they are not, or they have not been in the past focused on information security. This doesn't mean that those devices were not defined as vulnerable, as we will talk later, but simply it was not in our focus. And again, with such a controlled market, it was again hindering, right, or worsening the maturity state on the healthcare IT. And again, the cultural approach is still today much focused on privacy rather than cybersecurity. I think we all know that privacy and security or cybersecurity, of course, we're brothers and sisters on the same family, but I think our focus is different. So privacy again looks more on data management, user rights, etc. Of course, it should be, while cyber looks for more, again, infrastructure security, technology security, etc., etc. That has been our look traditionally, more focused on privacy in the healthcare business. Well, the InfoSec investment has never been aligned and probably will never. I think, again, common issue in many of the companies and probably your companies as well here, but again, especially relevant in the healthcare industry. There have been very, very low investment for all the reasons I have been already presenting. So again, all in all, we need to rethink our approach, especially for a sector like healthcare. Well, technology really here came with the realization we have data to exploit. Okay. So the thing is, where are we moving? What is the place? What is our battlefield, as said there? What this is basically, if you have the opportunity of visiting a hospital, hope for nothing serious, you can see it's basically like a data center. You have Ethernet cables everywhere. So all the devices you can see in the picture, they're connected. So they are sending data in real time to the electronic health record systems. They're sending data in real time to the companies that monitoring remotely those devices. They are storing data and analyzing those data for finding patterns. So again, this is a fully connected, fully digital environment, right? And it's becoming even more and more digital. So just for you to know, because it's already public, so Sanitas, my current company, is building a hospital in Madrid, actually, and they call it the cable-less hospital. They said, ideally, of course, it will be a fully connected hospital, fully cable-less hospital. So imagine it into a hospital, and again, it looks like I don't know, Google offices, right? Because again, everything is connected. All devices can move from here to there. You can enter into the hospital and basically their products in the market already, based on your location, because you have paired your watch based on your location. They already you arrive to the hospital, so they put you in the queue for the doctor. So they can manage the waiting times. So not only adjust the time you had the appointment, but when the actual time you arrive to the hospital. So imagine all that happening, right? Again, that is already there, and that's our battlefield. And of course, it has some challenges. Well, we always talk about confidentiality, integrity, and availability in the information security space. And the question is, well, always available? The technology is really always available? Well, that's a very interesting image, a draw that I found from Engaged. You can see the link there. Which comes from 2016 and talks about ransomware hospitals. So it's nothing really, really new. Yeah, the truth is, no, it's not always available. There have been already cases, and in Germany, actually, there have been already cases, very public cases, where patients couldn't be treated or couldn't be, attended in the ICU because the systems were under ransomware attack. And because they couldn't be treated, they would need to be treated to another hospital. And in the time they were moving the patient to the hospital, the patient died. That happened. That's a real case in Germany. There have been another documented cases in the US, which obviously in the US ended in court because they lost lawyers. So there are cases already that against Jackson Medical Hospital is probably the biggest healthcare group in the US, where a mother basically claims that lost her baby because when he went for some urgent treatment, whatever, the hospital was on the ransomware attack, couldn't treat her, and baby died. So terrible case, and she sued the hospital, and it's under the court now. So that's happening now, right? It's amazing to see that reflection, but that's happening now. Thing is, well, again, confidentiality or integrity. Well, it's always those systems always reliable, and that's very interesting case. So in the Ben Gurion University, because they are extremely good in healthcare security in Israel, especially in the Ben Gurion University, they have developed a malware. We can see a short video now that basically can modify in real time computerized tomography images and, well, magnetic resonance imaging in real time. So they can either add or remove images in tumors, for example. So they can fool the doctors, they can fool the radiologists when analyzing that data. So basically, they will provide a wrong diagnosis. They will say, you are fine, where probably the patient has a tumor that can be treated, or the other way around. Oh, you are terribly bad, while probably it's the other way around. And as you can see there, all these algorithms, you may misdiagnosed 99% of the scans that have been altered to add a tumor. So amazing. So when a tumor was added, 99% of the cases, radiologists were not able to spot it. And 94% where those were removed. So it's scary, right? So let me move, and hopefully you can see a short video. It's playing now, okay? It's 3 minutes, and it's basically the practical is 4 minutes, I think, no, 3 minutes. The practical demonstration of what I just basically said. Let's go for it.
Is the video with sound, Ivan?
Yeah, the video has some sound. It's not.
No, you probably have to activate the that it recognizes the sound of the video and place it over the platform.
Okay, but the video is moving by, right?
Yeah, the video is fine. It's just that we don't have the sound.
Okay. The question is, how can I do it? Video settings, audio. I'm not sure how can I do it, to be honest. Well, it's not. So I would say let's go ahead, because it's just basically some background music, dramatic music,
Okay,
actually.
good.
But there's not much to the case. Okay, let's go for it. So it's basically they are demonstrating what you have seen is real images, right? Real images are generated by a CT or MRI and modify in real time to add or remove tumors, for example. So now we are going to see the demonstration in a real hospital how this has been done. Okay. Okay, I will stop here, and basically the next is, well, you have seen the case, so it's really impressive, because when you see that from a theoretical point of view, it's like well, sounds very well. Not sure if this can be really done, but when you really see that with a 40 euros, dollars, whatever device, a Raspberry with a Raspbian, just intercepting data and modifying that in real time, makes you really wonder a lot of things. And basically, well, the case ends up, as said here, with full control over the tomography scans, and now can inject, remove cancer at will. Okay, so that's excuse me, that's been published, and it's available on the internet. So again, really makes wonder about if it's always a reliable technology, right? Okay, let's move next. And again, confidentiality, another big focus, well, for us as security professionals. Well, again, it's how is it always private, this information? Well, the truth is there have been extremely severe cases of data leakage in the industry in the last years. These are not new, but are probably the most relevant ones. So in the US has been especially critical, the impacts on this data leakage in the hospital's environment, but in Europe as well. Actually, the biggest and most recent case we will talk today as well, and happened in Europe. But the first one probably was the Anthem breach. The Anthem breach, which really marked an after and before on healthcare information security, because it comes from 2015. And what happened, basically, they got access with a very basic attack, taking advantage of a combination of human factor with social engineering and a basic vulnerability not fixed. They got into the company and stole data from more than 80 million people, because Anthem, well, Blue Cross is a huge group in the US, right? So yeah, it really marked an after before, because before that there was some attacks, local attacks, to this or that hospital, but never such a group, right? So that big group. And the second one, which again is not news, comes from 2018, is the Singapore data hack. This was not the biggest data breach, 1.5 million data records, but it was very relevant, because data from very, very prominent people was affected. For example, the Prime Minister and his whole family, and some other government officials and very, again, relevant people. In some cases, well, the information was leaked, and in some cases they were under treatment, under cancer treatment, or other kind of treatment. So imagine the amount, you know, this amount of data being not huge, but the impact was definitely huge, because one realization is, when we were talking about financial data, for example, if you get your financial data compromised, you can probably get issued a new credit card data. But if you get your medical records affected, that basically goes with you. I don't think you can change to medical history, right? So again, that's the question: always private or not? Yeah, there's another realization that private healthcare information is estimated at 10 more times valuable than financial data. There are many studies. Some of them say 100, some of them say 5, some of them say 50. Let's take 10, which is probably good enough. 10 times more valuable than financial data. Yeah, so there's this study that you can see in the image below from EY, which is the value per patient record, right? That probably can help us to understand the real value of medical record. So you can see just an electronic health record is more than 100 per record. We talk about genomic data, which is again already being captured, because there's a lot of technologies that is allowing to capture genomic data, is more than 1,500 per DNA sample. Okay, and that's interesting. When you know that the very first ransomware attack back in 1989, I mean, ransomware is everywhere Now I think it's probably the top one risk for all of our companies here, or at least one of the top three. Well, interestingly, the very first ransomware attack started in the healthcare environment. So it was interesting. It was called the AIDS attack. So, okay, I think I can. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so basically what happened is a PhD, a doctor called Joseph Pop, who was actually an AIDS researcher, sent physical floppy disks to, well, it said more than 20,000 people, doctors, universities, researchers, etc., with basically, well, claiming there is some sort of interesting information to you. So the guy was a doctor studying AIDS treatment, so he was not a crazy guy or anything. But basically, what the floppy disk had, it was a program, a routine program that modified the autoexec.bat and changed the name of the files in the computer. I mean, it was incredibly basic. This didn't encrypt anything or similar, just changed the name of the files. So kind of the very first ransomware attack. And the guy was asking for money. I said, well, if you want to get your data back, which again actually was not lost, you need to send me back by post. Yeah, this demand. I mean, 189 whatever dollars. That's very interesting. So that's the boom, the image that appeared. Basically, the guy was detained, of course. I mean, with such a simple attack, and of course, giving his personal address for please send me back the money. The guy was detained, put in jail actually, and he was claiming, I didn't want the money for myself. I just didn't want the money for AIDS research because he was low on funding, and he said, well, I will basically use technology to infect others to get money for my research. So yeah, interesting to know. It was even a surprise for me. Interesting to know that the very first ransomware attack started in the healthcare industry. Yeah, and that was basic stuff, but has been growing since then. So we have seen the Anthem attack, Excelus, hospital records, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Los Angeles hospitals, and actually he said 100 hospitals paid 17,000. That's another. Well, that's bad news. I think we all know that ransomware attacks shouldn't be paid for the ransom, of course. Otherwise, we are basically feeding the monster. But truth is, many companies in the hospital have been paying because they were so low on maturity they couldn't recover the data. So they were forced, or this it claimed, they were forced to pay. And again, more that happened in French, in Romania, actually during the pandemic, many cases, and that's a very recent one from a couple of weeks ago in Florida, in the US, where a number of hospitals were affected, big hospitals actually were affected, and especially during the pandemic. So the one you see on the top right in the ransomware hits Romanian hospitals. This happened in the midst of the pandemic. It happened in Spain. A couple of very big hospitals in the very worst moments of the pandemic, mid of 2020, they suffer ransomware attacks. It reaches such a critical point that even some groups like, say, Conti and Kiwi and some others publicly claim they will not be attacking for some time, healthcare and hospitals because they were nice people and they didn't want them to suffer more than they were suffering with the pandemic. Truth is, of course, you can't rely on that. And actually, some hospitals suffer attacks. Again, in Spain, we had some very, very prominent attacks during the pandemic. So that's a growing business. And instead, with unexpected impacts. That's up to date, for my point of view, the most worrying case. So well, I can't even pronounce the first name, which is in Irish, on the language they use, but the Health Service Executive, the HSE. What is the national health? It's like the NHS in the UK, for example. It's the national healthcare system for Ireland. Well, I said in 14th May 2021, they were impacted with Conti ransomware. And more than 80% of all the IT infrastructure was impacted, of course, creating unavailability, losing patient information, and, well, you can imagine the severe impact they had on a national healthcare system. It's not anymore about a particular hospital or group of hospitals or big company, which is, of course, terrible. It was against the national healthcare system, because even the NHS in the UK suffered quite a lot with WannaCry back in 2017. But it was localized. It was because the NHS, probably for good in that moment, the level of connectivity between the hospital is not huge. So some of them suffer, but most of the network didn't. But the HSE in Ireland, it was a very integrated system, and the whole system collapsed by some time. It was terribly, terribly bad. Of course, that triggered national alert with the National Guard and the NCSC. Well, as you can imagine and you can expect, it was a very terrible case, very discussed in political environments as well. And what I really recommend is this report on you can see there from PwC. They were commissioned by the Irish government. Once they recover, of course, the priority was to recover. Once they recover from the attack, they commissioned PwC to produce a report on why this has happened. I mean, what failed to make that this so severe? And it really is a masterpiece. I really like this report that you can is linked in here. You can see in the comments it's linked, but it's public. You can basically Google it. There are a couple of them, but this is very nice because it basically details step by step everything that fails from a technological, from an organizational, from a political, from a everything point of view, and proposes a number of things, of course, not to happen again. And the Irish government was extremely transparent. They said, well, all this failed. We should have been doing all these things that we didn't. And because of that, all that failed and we suffered that. So again, for me, it's very impacting or very revealing, because collapsing a whole national healthcare system, that's another kind of game, right? And very short about regulations. Something that has been happening is that regulation, when there is a mature regulation that forces on helps companies and industries to get better, maturity accelerates, right? It's normally the case. I mean, being compliant or projects for being compliant with the regulation are not sexy, right? I mean, boards are not like super interested in that, but you need to do it, full stop. I mean, do it. And that helps, again, companies to get more mature. In the healthcare industry, this has not been happening in the last years. There were very fragmented regulations. I want to say not even regional, sometimes not even national, sometimes even local regulations. I mean, take the case of Spain. Spain, a sovereign country, we have 17 regions like the Bundesland in Germany, right? And all of them, they have their own healthcare system in all region. It's regional healthcare system. Integrate somehow in the national network, but it's regional. So with such a fragmented entities, the lack of having these directives, the lack of having mature regulations has not helped to get proper maturity. Same on the product side of things. There have not been guidelines and security recommendations, security requirements for products on the healthcare, healthcare producers, all these 4 or 5 big companies that produce healthcare. No, they simply have no regulations or requirements from the regulator. So why should I implement this or that control where I'm not forced to do so? Well, they have been changing in the past. They have been changing. Actually, some very interesting things. So the NISA runs an exercise called Cyber Europe. Every 2 years with the pandemic, they basically hold it for some time. And they have been, there are industry exercises. They took, for example, financial industry, aviation industry. Well, this year, I'm actually I know many companies are participating in the Cyber Europe exercises, is the healthcare industry, the one they are testing. They are testing from a practical point of view, with practical attacks, resilience attack, etc., etc. So there's more and more focus on healthcare, but it's still developing regulations. Okay, so I'm pretty sure they will be changing, but it's still developing. Well, last but not least, well, there are 4 basic pillars for healthcare InfoSec model, which, to be honest, healthcare or put any kind of industry there. There's some specifics for healthcare, nevertheless, here. Again, no surprise here, but again, focus on endpoint and infrastructure protection. Why? Because the first thing is understand your attack surface. As said at the beginning, many companies don't understand, they don't know their attack surface because the introduction of IoT and medical devices is already there, but they are not even aware. So IT teams in healthcare businesses, they have no idea that those devices are there and are connected and are managed remotely. So key to focus on that, especially on IoT and medical IoT devices. Of course, patching and manage outdated versions. All legacy is a disaster in healthcare. We need to work with vendors. We need to work with IT teams to get that, and that's what we are doing as an industry and trying to boost. Right, advanced protection. Of course, AV is dead. I think we all know that. Moving to EDR, XDR, behavioral analytics, secure methods for remote access, etc. Well, employee awareness, our second pillar, especially critical in healthcare, because healthcare is not an office-based business. An office-based business is very particular. It's one person, one asset, 8 to 5, I don't know, whatever. It's a predictable business. This is not in the healthcare business. It's a 24/7 business. The one person, one IT asset is not the case. I mean, they work in shared devices. They work in shifts. It's very complex. Excuse me. That's why it's so critical having that employee awareness. Best practices regulation, third pillar. As said, we need to, and we are trying to be sponsors of getting more mature guidelines within the industry, with the help of ENISA and some others. And research. I think that's probably very specific, interesting here. We need to do more research, and we are doing so as an industry, healthcare industry. Again, there's a clear knowledge that we have been not probably doing our homework in the past. Now we need to an accelerated pace. And one thing that it's very interesting, the industry is promoting, and we are promoting here, myself and the group I work for, is the bug bounty initiatives for med hacking. So again, all the medical manufacturing companies, again, very close market, very big companies. It's good that we help them in these bug bounty initiatives. It's good that we encourage people to discover vulnerabilities on those devices and then work with manufacturers to get that sorted out. So again, very 4 basic pillars. That's basically we are working in. And yeah, challenges ahead. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for your time today. If there is any question, I'm happy to take it.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Very delightful and enlightening presentation. Just one administrative comment here. There was one question around CPEs. So CPEs will be issued 2 weeks after the event to the email address that you used to register to this event. Okay, let's get into the first questions. You showed a slide showing the decrease of patients registered by Google, and there was a peak in 2015. Is there a known reason for the lower development in the trend?
Okay, let me try to go for it. It was written about Verily, right? Or here you mean? Or okay, on the patents here.
Yeah, exactly, on the trend.
Yeah, exactly. So here the increase, basically, well, it was in 2015. Is when Google Alphabet created Verily Life Sciences So it was established in 2015, but of course, it was already resonating in the market. So the big year for healthcare in the US, healthcare-focused healthcare patents, came from the announcement of Alphabet of the focus on life sciences. That moved not only them, clearly, as we can see here, but others like Microsoft to heavily invest that particular year. Yes, since they're having a decrease, is that not easy to find data? My impression is since 2020 has probably increased at levels as 2015, probably.
Okay, interesting. Okay, next question I have, and it's a question I have from discussions I have with our internal subject expert group that we have at ISACA Germany, which is to do with the electronic health record. So you know that electronic health records, countries trying to digitalize more and more. What are your experiences with this, maybe that you've seen across countries or in Spain, and the stance on security that's been taken towards it?
Well, there is a huge push for medical record sharing, huge. And the ones that are sponsoring that are governments. And if they sponsor that, it will happen. Well, I think clearly there's a clearly benefit from as a society, right? At the end, if my medical data can help to save others' lives, similarly, others' data can help or improve my life. That's fantastic as a principle. But of course, the data, well, what we're talking about, that's quite sensitive. So what we are leveraging here is blockchain technologies that allow, because it's only about the confidentiality, it's about the integrity of those data. So the governments, my impression is in the near future, we will be seeing more and more initiatives for sharing medical data across companies, governments, etc. Data sovereignty as well. We as citizens, we will be more empowered to know and to manage our own data, even data portability, right? I mean, portability is a right in GDPR. You can move from telco company to telco company, or bank, or from bank to bank, and you have the right as a citizen under the GDPR to take your data to portability. That will happen for sure in the medical industry as well. So it's a very interesting moment that appears there. And of course, the security challenges are huge. To be honest, I'm not even able to anticipate those, but yeah, it will happen.
Okay, excellent. Next question we have is in terms of IT security posture of a hospital in the last years. Did you say sustainable improvements, or what's your experience?
Yeah, no, I think there has been a sustained improvement. The pandemic didn't help because, of course, the hospitals after the big breaches in 15, 16, 17, there was sustained, I would say not sustained, accelerated improve. But of course, the pandemic forced us to stop and move again to patient treatment mode. Since a year or so that we are recovering some sort of normality in the industry, I see hospital groups again heavily investing. I see lots of startups as well, a lot of companies focusing on medical devices security that are very interesting. There are some very big German groups which are actually taking the lead on hospital security, which is good to see as well. So yeah, pandemic hold a little bit, but I see that sustained improvement happening again.
Okay. There's one question on resource availability for specialists in the healthcare sector. Working as a security specialist in the healthcare sector, are you required to have specific skill set as compared maybe to financial services, where there's some regulation out there that you need to be across?
Yeah, good question. No, not really. I would say probably IoT. So it's something that is the most interesting and required for the healthcare industry, because again, IoT and MIoT are very specific. So I would say there are no very specific requirements besides IoT security. If you are a good expert and you focus yourself on IoT and medical IoT security, well, you have lots of work forever. But besides that, no. And to be honest, in the current moment of scarcity of talent, we probably need to bring people and train them rather than have very strict requirements so the work will not be. So I would say IoT, nothing special besides that.
Yeah, and also maybe to add, because that's something I learned throughout this presentation, because when you think about healthcare, you think about a hospital or a private practitioner, a GP that you go to, or dentist, but it's far broader, because as you work more on the insurance side, then you have like public health insurers, then you have the government, the health systems, then you have the actual practitioners that bring healthcare to the people, like the hospitals and the systems, but you also have all things interfaced and interconnected, and all these devices. There's actually a really broad discipline.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's no more question. So thank you very much, Ivan. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here with us for this talk. And yeah, I hope your next engagement will bring you back to Germany, and we will have opportunities to collaborate and to interact more closely going forward.
Definitely, it will be a pleasure. Thanks to everyone. Hope you enjoy the session. Happy to stay in touch. And thanks, Matthias and Sarah. Great initiative. Pleased to hear, and definitely more than willing to participate when Matthias told me you're doing that. Again, great initiative, guys.
Thank you very much. And yeah, everyone have a good afternoon, and speak to you next month.
Bye. Adiós. Gracias.